Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Kait Fowlie, and she is from Toronto, Canada. And Kait is such a beautiful inspiration. The way that she shares and expresses through her work is just really phenomenal. And not only is she a practitioner of Reiki and a tarot reader, she also contributes to various blogs, and her writing is just amazing. So we're going to talk today about how she is inspired by life. And I'm sure that what she shared in our episode together will inspire you as well, not only to continue on your journey, but to do it in your own way. So I want to also thank you all for being here, being part of the community, showing up for the podcast, and thank you so much for continuing to join me in the Seeker Circle. You know, I get very excited by the growth and the fact that we are all sharing more and more because we start to normalize all of this and gain more understanding and just be able to be such a support for each other on these paths. So I thank you so much for being here and enjoy the show. Okay, so welcome to the show. Today we have a special guest, Kait Fowlie, and I'm really excited to have her here today. She does so much beautiful creative work that she's sharing with the world. She does Reiki and tarot, but she's also a beautiful writer, and we will get into some of that. But she's always working on finding a balance between spirit and self, as so many of us are, and really finding a sense of purpose in community. So I am thankful to welcome Kait here with us today to talk about how she is inspired by life. So welcome, Kait.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I have to say it's interesting too, and I'm always so thankful for this, that we're so far away in distance and able to connect in these ways. So you are based in Toronto, Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you are. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I wanted to talk about again is, you know, your work in of itself is very inspirational. And I love that you have this blend of spirituality, but like fun and creativity, because I think a lot of times people put it in a box of, you know, spirituality and this sad little serious box, and there just seems to be so much life that comes through what you share. So I wanted to ask you first off, what even inspires you to share in the ways that you do?
That's such a good question. I think that if there's anything that I'm really good at in this life, it's finding inspiration for myself. So it's like finding things that light me up and finding things that make me excited about life. And the reason that I got into writing, I guess, in the first place was just because I wanted to share that and just wanted to like share that with communities of people that I thought might be interested too. Because I mean, yeah, why not share like inspiration? Like the world needs it so much right now. So
right.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, to that point, I'm always really inspired by communities of people doing interesting things and co-creating things together. I think that's like the best part of the internet.
Yeah, it really is. And something else that seems to kind of scream out from what you share, and we will talk about, because I want people to obviously like go to your website and see all your beautiful writing, but even on Instagram, like, you know, and I told you this when we spoke before, what you share is just so creative, and it just reminds me of almost like editorials. Like you could be, you have like a whole magazine of, you know, your offerings, and it's beautiful. But something that stood out too, looking at what you do, is like belonging to yourself first while also being a part of community. So in all of this and the work that you do, what is it that you would say maybe like stands out for you in terms of like this personalization and making all of this your own?
Oh my gosh, that's like the only way to do it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much like to play with here on earth in this digital age, in this time right now. Like we have so many resources available to us right now. And I think that it's really like with something like Instagram, it's really easy to just be like, oh, I don't want to be on Instagram. It's so superficial. And yes, like there is that side of it, but I mean, like you can kind of like take it and use it as your platform to like create whatever you want with it. And that's why, that's why I love like kind of using it for storytelling and just like hopefully inspiring people. But yeah, it's just like fun. It's just a fun way to connect and tell stories. Yeah.
I think that's really the beauty of it is I think you just hit the nail on the head with it. It seems like through your work, you do such a beautiful job of storytelling, not just in written word, but even in the images that you share. Yeah. And obviously, you know, the words that you write along with the images. But I think that looking at your work, it really, there's two things I would say, like you've inspired me in a few ways. One, it reminds me of the importance of like really owning all of this as our own, which I think is such a beautiful thing, that it doesn't have to look a certain way, and it doesn't, you know, you don't have to subscribe to anyone else's look or way, that it can be yours. But also looking at what you share reminds me of my passion for photography. So thank you for that. You didn't even know that you inspired me.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. And I mean, like visuals are so powerful too, right? Like that's how we learn and how we interpret things to be the truth for ourselves. So visuals are huge. Like there's such a huge storytelling potential with like something like photography. So it's just like so much fun.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that too when we get to the aspect of tarot, because I know that you even have a tarot workshop coming up. But the power of visual and the symbolism and all of the messaging, what we can interpret from that, I think is huge. So I think one of the things is just, you know, you're reminding me of the importance of paying attention to all the stimulus that we have, like using all of our senses. So it kind of leads me into the next question for you. When we spoke a few days ago, you talked about, you know, a lot of this work really helping you to feel more home on earth. And I thought that was so powerful because, you know, there are a lot of us who feel misplaced or feel, you know, like, man, this is a strange place. But when you engage with the world, what about it feels strange to you? Or what is it about these practices that also make you feel more settled into your being or even being here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much digital clutter happening around us all the time. And on one hand, it is a beautiful resource that we can use and make our own. On the other hand, it's like very overwhelming and can be like chaos. Like we're living in a lot of chaos all the time. And someone like me, like I'm so sensitive. On like my really bad days, I feel like I am too sensitive for this world. Like I can't do things that other people do and not have like physical reactions. So I think that rather than just like berate myself for being really sensitive and you know, like lament being too sensitive for this world, like I think there's some power in kind of like owning that sensitivity and using it as a strength and like using it to really zero in on like the things that I love and the things that light me up and just focus on that and like use that as my one resource that I'm going to create a story about or write about or something like that. But yeah, I mean, sensitivity as a strength has been like a huge lesson of my life, but just like these esoteric tools have helped me so much, like tarot and Reiki and even writing, like just to like zero in on what feels right for me has really helped me to feel stronger in this world that we're living in.
Totally. It's really interesting hearing you say that because it reminds me of, in a way, because I also, before I did all of this, you know, sensitive empath, had no idea what that was, but I was like the weird friend that couldn't take being in certain environments because it was, you know, I was sensitive to what I was feeling. But listening to you say that, I'm like, man, that would have been really cool to have even known back there the possibility of channeling all that I was feeling and
Mm-hmm.
pouring it into something creative.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool thing. So like these creative outlets that you have, and even the, tool, I mean, well, our creative outlets are spiritual too, but all of these tools and interests that you have, do you use those as a way to help you stay like more centered and managing your sensitivities? Like, do they come into play with all of that?
Yeah, for sure. I think with Reiki, like the way I started getting into Reiki was I just sort of thought of it as like my like moving meditation sort of. So that was like sort of how I tricked myself into being more mindful. Obviously my relationship with Reiki like evolved and it started to become something different, but that's how I sort of got into it. But certainly Reiki helps me like ground into myself and into my like clarity, like in the moment kind of thing.
Right.
And with tarot has really helped me in like the mental emotional sort of realm, I guess. Like I just like to use it as a tool for clarity and connecting with my subconscious and connecting with like a deeper truth that I don't really see. So I think those are the two springboards from which like a lot of my creativity kind of like can bloom, I guess.
It's really funny. Like I was trying not to crack up when you were saying that. As soon as you said I tricked myself into being more mindful, I was like, oh my God, don't we all? It's really funny you said it. I mean, again, I think so many people will resonate with that, because I think when we come into this, whatever leads us into these tools and, these different interests, I don't think we ever can really imagine what we're really signing up for. And the experience and like the rabbit hole and all of it, all the doors that open, like you have no idea. You could never predict what's going to happen.
It's so funny that you say that, because I think like really the truth of it is that my journey with all this started because I wanted to have like more control over myself in the world. And I thought that these tools would give me a way to do that. But if they've taught me anything, it's that I have even less control than I ever thought. Like it's such a rabbit hole. But it's funny. I'm glad I got into them, like for sure. But it's just like, it's funny that I started off this way and it led me to find a completely different truth entirely.
Right. And something else with you too, you said about having a sense of purpose and community. And I thought that was really powerful too, because I mean, obviously it's something that so many people like lose sleep over. Like, what's my purpose? What am I doing with my life? How do I figure this stuff out? But I think there's something very beautiful in that it's not just about us. Like you saying, wanting to find a sense of purpose in community, because it really speaks to that underlying want that we have to contribute and feel a part of. So, I just wanted to ask you for yourself personally, like, why does that resonate with you? Like having purpose in community or giving back or sharing and all that you do.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't know. I've always been sort of like purpose driven, I think. Like I've always been kind of like a restless kind of kid kind of person.
Right.
And it makes me feel kind of like itchy when I'm just like going out and just like hanging. Like I don't hang, like I have a hard time like just hanging around. I always kind of have to be like, what are we doing here? And I guess like that kind of is a much bigger question in a lot of ways too. Like there's always kind of like this underlying thing with me. It's like, what are we really doing here? Like, what am I doing here? And I think ultimately like our purpose is the same, like for all of us. Like the purpose is to be here with a sense of purpose, like with a sense of intentionality. And that's like just to be loving, like just to be the most loving people that we can in like whatever way that looks like for us. So I mean, like a sense of purpose is really the purpose, I think.
Yes.
Right?
That's really interesting. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me all the time, like, how did you end up doing what you feel is your purpose? And I'm like, oh gosh, well, really, now that I think about it, and in the space that I'm in right now, the truth is every day is kind of like, I'm open to new purpose. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm, like I'm living my life. I'm doing certain things that are just part of my, routine or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know that there's just one. Like, I'm just kind of open to whatever is the purpose of the day. Like, I don't know. I guess we'll see when we wake up. But
maybe being present is the purpose, right?
Yes, right? Yeah, if we listen to like all of these ancient teachings, it's like, that's a funny thing too. Is we hear the same things over and over again, but it just doesn't really click until we start playing with all of these tools. But before we get into the Reiki and the tarot, because I really want to talk to you about your journey with both of those, I do want to talk about you as a writer, because I think that everyone listening, I would really recommend you go to her website, and the link to her website will be in the show description, but it's Kait Fowlie, Kait, F as in Frank, OWLIE.com. And you contribute to various sites, and you have all of these beautiful offerings about tarot and astrology and healing and beauty and travel. Like, it's so diverse, and I love it all so much. I like that it doesn't seem like you're not in a box.
Yeah.
You know, like you haven't identified yourself as like just in one niche. Like, you allow this expression of yourself in all of these different channels. But first, I wanted to ask you, is writing in of itself, is that part of your healing process? And people who are drawn to written word, like, how do you describe like what that does for you?
Oh, totally. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you to say that my writing is, that you've enjoyed it. Writing has been like a huge, huge part of my healing journey for sure. Like, I've been a journaler ever since I was like a young child. I have like bins of journals just like full in my parents' basement. I think I journaled before I even really knew what I was doing or like why I was doing it. I just loved the idea of like having this little book that was mine and just like filling it page after page of like whatever. Like I had dream journals when I was a kid. I had like spying on the neighbor journals. I had like goals journals. I had like all these like weird little things that I did when I was a kid, but I was just like, I don't know why I did it. It's so weird, but I just felt like it was just like those inner child things that I still tap into, you know, that just like bring me joy for no reason. But I still journal to this day, and I probably journal every day. It's like one of the most consistent practices that I do. I was into like morning pages for a little while. Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. I don't know if you've read it.
I have 2 copies of it.
So good, right? Like, it's just like, that's one of those books that you could just like read a million times. So I've been into morning pages. That's something that's kind of like really stuck with me. Journaling and tarot go together so close too for me, so that's another really big thing. But I mean, stream of consciousness journaling at any point in the day or whatever is just like huge. So writing pen to paper is huge for me.
I think it is such a beautiful, I started journaling very young, and it's always hindsight, like looking back, and then comparing the journaling to the work that I do now. I think that in a lot of ways it helps us to really connect into that intuitive self, or like that higher state of our consciousness that is so far and beyond just what is in front of us here. It's very interesting the way that it allows you to engage with your mind in a different way. So I think I always tell people it's a great practice to just let yourself write, especially if you're trying to open up even intuitively. But I know I could talk to you about like all over, but I want to make sure I ask you. There's this one piece, there's a couple of pieces you wrote that I want to ask you about, but one that stood out was the piece that you wrote about visiting Freitas House. And I mean, of course, interesting because she's a beautiful artist, and but what stood out to me is that you said visiting her house changed your idea of lifestyle, your lifestyle goals. And I thought that was so huge, because I was like, visiting her house changed your lifestyle goals. So I wanted to know how so, and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. that was such an amazing experience visiting her house. Yeah, one of my best friends lives in Mexico City. So I went to go visit her, and we went to Freitas House, and yeah, it just blew my mind. Like, it was totally exactly as I imagined it would have been. Like, it was such an imaginative playground. Like, her walls were like bright blue. Like, the house is like cobalt blue, and like there's just it's like exploding with color and life, and it's just so her. Like, it's just like such a little work of art. And she, like, you can really tell that she kind of like made her home like this work of art, and you can just like see her in it. And it's funny because she, I mean, like, has this super like tumultuous story, like, with her life. Right. And she's like bedridden, and like, oh my gosh, if I had lived her life, I literally wouldn't, like, I would not be able to do anything because I'd be complaining all the time. Like, it just changed it changed my whole perspective of like what we can do, like, with our, you know, like, even like a small scale, like with something like decor, like you can make it something so inspiring and so nourishing.
Yes. And that was the thing, because, and again, I recommend everyone go to your site and read your different articles, but read this one because you did make a list of how it changed your lifestyle goals. And the very first thing you put was that it was personal tragedy can be made into something powerful. And I was like, yes, oh my God, that's such a beautiful message, especially I think now, because you see, obviously, like with what's going on in the world, a lot of people feel helpless, and a lot of people feel they feel all kinds of things. And there is a lot of like hurt and loss and suffering and all of these hard emotions going on. And I think in those spaces, it's hard for people to even hear that there's light at the end of the tunnel, or it's hard for people to hear, be positive, or, you know, change your perspective. So even in that, just like you were speaking about how challenging her life was in many regards, but then she created this space with so much beauty, and you said exploding with life. I mean, that's huge. So you also said in that having a great life starts with having a creative perspective daily. I was like, what? Yeah. So how, with that again, like for people that are listening, and we all have bad days, like how has that helped you, and how do you really use that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Having a creative perspective is everything, because that's like the way out of everything. Like, it's like when you say no, there is no answer. It's like you just shut everything down. But like with a more creative mindset, like when you stop labeling things as good as or bad, like you can see so many other options. So obviously that's like a daily practice for me. It's really difficult to do that. But yeah, I mean, having idols, I think, like Frida, who set a really good example of creating solutions, is really helpful for someone, you know, like me in this modern life. Like, having an example like that is really motivating and really inspiring. But yeah, I mean, it all just like comes back to like being grounded in perspective and like being grounded in the moment, I think, and just like remembering, like, I have a choice. Like, I have a choice, and I can choose to shut myself down, or I can choose to find a creative solution, find a way. So
yeah, it reminds me too of, you know, this again reminds me so much of you, of being inspired by life. And I think it's a good reminder for us that our tools of healing come in various forms, you know? So it's like, it wasn't like you were in a meditation or doing yoga poses or whatever. Like, you went to this woman's house and were inspired by her art and her life and how she took, you know, tragedy and made it something powerful. Like, it's such a beautiful reminder that we can, like, we're surrounded by all of this potential healing support if we just could be present enough to see what we're really surrounded by, I guess. Maybe the way to say it.
Yeah, we'll just be less bogged down by like judgments, I guess, of like what's happening around us, right?
Yeah. Okay, now another one I have to, I wanted to point out to share with everyone listening, because a lot of people who listen to the show, and myself included, really love astrology. And I'll point out you're a Pisces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
beautiful Pisces. And you wrote an article, and I was cracking up. I actually saw this one on Instagram about vacationing according to your sign. I was like, how brilliant is this? And you had for mine, which is, I'm Aquarius, Iceland. And I was like, what? Iceland?
Oh, yeah,
When I read the reasoning in the description, I was like, oh my God, that's really cool. And I like Bjork as a side note, but really, really cool. What made you even come up with that?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be totally honest. I was assigned it by my editor, so it wasn't my idea. But I think that, like, I probably would have pitched it myself. I think that you can totally make a decision like that based on your sign. Like, you can totally understand, like, what kind of communities you would want to be in and around, and like what kind of like landscape you would want to be navigating, what you would kind of want to be doing. Like, a Pisces might want to be close to like water, or might want to be close to like somewhere they can explore some like really old ruins, or like, I was thinking, like, with an Aquarius, I would want to put you somewhere where you could like have a vacation of the mind. Like, your mind could just like have lots of like little things to play with, and it could be like a cabinet of curiosities that you could like absorb and have fun with, maybe.
Yes.
That's
really, really cool. And I love that you said it, because it also, I guess what it was about that article that stood out to me is a lot of times, we feel stuck and like we don't know what to do. And again, it could be like that question of what's my purpose? But even sometimes being like more lighthearted about these things and looking to something like astrology of like, oh, well, if I wanted to go to dinner tonight, based on my sign, what may be some possible thing? Like, just, I think it's fun that these things like really take us outside of the box of the, just the lines that we have been raised in, and, it's not so sterile kind of. Again, like everything that you do just seems to, which I love, explode everything. And it's like everything you share really does, like, inspire living, because it's looking at everything from this lens that just feels so open and creative and very Pisces of you, I guess I would say.
I think that might be why I'm interested in astrology, because like there's so many times when like being an adult in the world feels so like you're in a box. So like the solution to that is like, why not look to the cosmos and see what's going on there, and like how we can kind of like loosen up the box a little bit, or like,
Now, speaking of that too, the last thing I want to talk about writing wise, which kind of will segue into tarot. A lot of people are so curious about tarot, and like myself, I can't even remember an introduction to it, but I was afraid of it at first because of the imagery, and I was like, I don't want any parts of that. And then of course, as you progress along in this, all that falls away. But you wrote this article called Tarot Curious, and it was beautiful that you had these recommendations of decks for people who may be just getting started. So I wanted to ask you about that, and for anyone curious about tarot, what got you started into tarot? Like, what was your draw to that divination at all?
Well, I was gifted my first tarot deck when I was 11 years old by a friend of mine, who obviously like saw some part of me that I like wasn't ready to see at that point, because I was afraid, like you, of the imagery, and I was like, this is definitely bad luck. I can't have it in my house. I was just like freaked out, so I gave it away. But I was still super curious about it, and I was interested in like definitely the witchy side of things, like a lot of girls my age for sure. But I ended up just a couple of years ago finding a time capsule that I had written for myself when I was 11 years old. And I was like, listed all these things that I like wanted to become, and I like hoped that my future self had become, would become rather. And I was like, I hope that you become a tarot reader. I have a deck right now, but like I don't know everything yet. Like I can't do it. So I found that time capsule like a couple years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, like message received. Like it was like having like such a little blast from the past from this like part of me that was like my higher self, but my younger self. So so I just like got into it from there. And I guess I have like my journals and my love of writing to kind of like thank for that. But I've been reading tarot for I guess 3 years now and been doing it like pretty seriously for 2 years. But I love it so much. It's like such a source of like endless fascination for me. So
well, I wanted to ask you about that too. I mean, kind of looping back to the beautiful imagery you share online and the pictures that you take and just how creative you are. When you read tarot, or if you're teaching, which I know you have a workshop coming up, do you find that with the imagery, beyond maybe what's even written as like the definition of the book, do you find that it's easier for people to connect with their own symbolism, or is there something in the cards or even the deck that you choose? Is it based on the imagery? Is that what pulls you in? Or
yeah, I have a couple different decks that I work with, and I like the spin that some of the contemporary artists have taken on it. I think that I've only recently just started working with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which is like the traditional sort of imagery.
Right.
I mean, I like the idea of giving tarot more of a like more diversity. I think that like some of the newer decks like Black Onyx is super cool, and I love just like using these archetypes and portraying them in a way that speaks a little bit more to like our society.
Right.
But I mean, like archetypes are kind of archetypes, and that's what the tarot is all about. But the art of it is really fun and can be really fun.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you too, I mean, very specific to tarot again, is why do you use it, or like how do you implement that tool into your life? Because, some people think it is just for fortune telling.
Yeah.
But what is it that you love about tarot?
I love how tarot kind of like calls me on my own bullshit. Like the most, like that's like the number one key thing I love about it. Like I've been doing like a daily draw lately, and I'll just like ask a question like, what do I need to know about today? And it will, like the message might not be so clear right away. Like sometimes it'll take like an hour or even like a couple of days to become so clear in my mind that like, oh, like this, like it's just like a little jolt for my intuition. Like this morning I pulled the Emperor, and I'm really thinking a lot about like the structures in my life right now. So that like kind of felt like apt. But yeah, the structures in my life are something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and like owning my own structure and being my own kind of like authority is something that I'm working on right now. But I mean, like with even like things like that, like tarot helps me a lot, I guess, like just achieve more clarity around issues that seem like unmanageable.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing you pointed out is it calls you on your own bullshit, which is hilarious to me because it does, but I know a lot of people when they're learning whether tarot or oracle, they'll start out, and if they don't like the answer, they'll try to pull another card to change the answer, or like they'll wait the next day and the same card will keep coming up, and it's like like we can't avoid it. So it's really interesting how it does like really call forward like the card that is resonant with whatever you're questioning or what you have going on. So I know that you do have a workshop coming up this Saturday actually, and you're in Toronto, but is that where the workshop is as well?
Yeah, it's at a new meditation studio in Toronto called the Quiet Company. So yeah, it's just like on King Street here in Toronto.
Okay, so That's on Saturday. So if you're in Toronto, you should go.
Yes.
It's from 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's called Finding Yourself in Tarot. So again, if you want more information about it, you can go to her website. She has on the events page information about where it is and all of this. But what is the class about? Like, what is it that you want to share with people through this workshop?
I just like the idea of tarot curious people, I guess, coming together and supporting each other on this journey. I know for me, it took me a long time to like own the term tarot reader, because you kind of have to figure out what that means for you. Like, what kind of a tarot reader am I? And like, what even is the tarot to me? So I have a few like prompts and activities planned for us to kind of allow our intuition to guide us to that right answer.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Actually, everything that you've been saying, it's so funny. Like, I keep smiling because it all seems to redirect us back to ourselves, which I think is so important. And I think, we've changed so much. Like, I think about this all the time, how a lot of these systems that we use and these practices that we practice, came from different times and different cultures, and things were just different then. I mean, you had to be initiated into certain practices and to have access to certain information. And so it was more rigid and more structured, and maybe you really did just stay in line with tradition. Whereas now there is this more of a freedom of allowing us to own whatever it is that we play with. So I like that you said, like, really giving people this space to see what even being a tarot reader means for them. Because I think it's important for people to know, like, you're not necessarily going to mirror someone else, and that doesn't validate if you're right or wrong or good or bad at what you do. It's your practice.
Yeah. Like, it's just a tool. And I mean, like, you can only bring to it what you have to bring to it. So
have you always had this openness? I mean, because you are, like, you just seem so very free in your expression.
Oh my gosh.
All of these things. Was it always that way, or you got here?
That's so funny. I don't know. I have a Virgo. I'm a Pisces sun with a Virgo moon. So I think learning to be free and open is like been a big lesson for me. Like, cause I have this, desire to be free and open, but then the way that I do things, or the way that I need to do things, is often like I need to be very organized. I need to be very like meticulous. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like a balance. So I'm mindful of it, and maybe that helps me. But
yeah,
tarot helps me.
Yes, and it's such a cool thing. And I really do wonder with, and I have to tell you, it's coming up again to tell you, I want to thank you for, even coming to share about your story and the work that you do. I mean, we still have more to talk about, but I think that it's so beautiful to hear everyone's stories. And I think, just like you have very obviously been inspired by life and like all these beautiful creative outlets. Again, I think it's beautiful that it will inspire so many people to know, like, yeah, you can do this stuff your way. And it is meant to be an expression of you. Like, even if you read tarot, it's an expression of you, your delivery of it, and how you see, and all of these things. Did you have any challenges when you first started reading? Were there any obstacles for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot to learn. Like, the 78 card system is definitely a lot to learn. I think it definitely forces you to face your shadow in a lot of ways. There's definitely a lot of ways that your shadow can kind of like come to the surface when you're working with tarot, not just with like difficult cards. Like, obviously there's so many difficult cards, like the devil or like the tower, or like they can be different for everyone, but it really forces you, like, if you want to be a clear channel and bring this message to someone else and share it with them and allow them space to interpret the reading as they will, then you have to be willing to heal your relationship with those difficult archetypes. And it has to go beyond just the tarot. It has to go into your day-to-day life. Because that's when we can really do like healing work.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, there's also like the difficulty, I think, sometimes where we have trouble maybe like branding ourselves and positioning ourselves, and like how do we want to let people know what to expect, and what kind of like people do we want to attract in, and like how are we going to do this? That's like, it's all a journey, I think.
No, it totally is. And I love that you said that, you know, it is necessary for us to work on our own stuff in order to be a clear channel in holding space for other people, because I mean, God, like come up with 10,000 reasons of why possibly, but you know, it seems to be that we are starting to move away from this idea of pretending to be spiritual and really allowing ourselves to do the work and go through the process of, you know, really loving and owning our shit, and, you know, really truly allowing ourselves to do that deep dive healing outside of our judgment and all of these things, but seeing like the beauty in the shadow and the purpose of like not avoiding these things. And I think the tarot is beautiful for that. So I wanted to ask you too, of course, about Reiki. And I know you told me a little bit about it, but I would love for you to share, you know, what led you to Reiki, how this even popped up in your life.
Yeah. Reiki popped up in my life at a young age, like tarot did. My mom's a hairdresser, so she worked in a salon that had massage therapists, and some of them were also Reiki practitioners. So I sort of just like grew up believing that this was just like something that registered massage therapists could do, or like some of them just did. It's sort of an extension of just like the mainstream spa world to me, which I'm glad of, because I might not have known about it otherwise, or I might have had some other different ideas about it. But yeah, so I started practicing Reiki when I moved to Toronto, and I started working full-time for the first time in my young life. And this was a while ago now, but I wanted just a way to like manage my energy while I was like just in this grind all the time. And I wanted just a way to feel like I could stop time and manage my energy in a super tangible way. And yeah, like I said earlier, like it just sort of kind of appealed to me as like moving meditation. So that's like how it started. But as I practiced more and more, I obviously got to understand what my chakras felt like, and started working with like crystals and things like that, and just like really sort of just opened up a whole other world beyond moving meditation and whatever I thought that could be. But and again, also it comes back to honoring my sensitivity too, because Reiki is such a subtle energy, and it really forced me to be so present and so sensitized to the feeling in my hands and the feeling in my body and my emotions and everything. So it helped me so much, and it still does. Yeah.
Isn't that the beautiful thing about it? It reminds me of, again, like how when we start with any of this in this exploration, you can't even almost imagine the can of worms you're about to open. But it's listening to you say this reminds me of how amazing it is to experience yourself in frequency or in vibration, you know, because you can say it to someone and it probably sounds insane, but you have the experience of experiencing yourself, like, you know, beyond the physical, but even like recognizing the energetics of the physical. It's just, it's mind blowing. Yeah. So one of the things with this too, especially with you being so sensitive and very empathic, when you started working with Reiki, did that help you at all with managing your sensitivity or? did it make you more sensitive? What was your experience with that?
I think it actually ended up making the like duality of the life I was living at the time so clear. Like it made this part of me that was super into energy and like the woo-woo side of things that was only really just starting at that point. It made that super clear to me. Like, so I would be doing like Reiki on myself at night in my condo unit and going to work for like this super corporate job during the day. And that was sort of like the start of my healing journey when I realized how extreme these two parts of my life really felt. So moving forward was a matter of me trying to like find a way to integrate them, I guess. And I'm still doing that every day, right? Like I don't know if that ever, I don't know if it ever ends, but yeah, it's a journey anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of people have a hard time with this too. Especially, I guess, in a way, I would say, sometimes I feel like I'm lucky that I got let into this like after being let off, because I didn't, I mean, let off. Did I say that? I meant laid off. So I didn't really have that experience of, like corporate by day, Reiki by night, but I work with a lot of people who do go through this, and it can be maddening because they feel like they're being pulled in, two different directions, one way by the heart and then the other side obligation. So do you have any tips or like what has worked for you in finding balance between the two?
Oh, community has been huge. Like community has been so life-changing for me. Like I started doing Reiki shares a lot at my studio when I was going through that very extreme period of my life, and just having people to share my experience with just made me feel so much less alone, and really just expanded that part of me and made it feel more normal and made me feel more grounded in this what I thought was so out there at the time compared to the normal life that I was living. So other people have been huge.
I think I totally agree. I think community is huge in all of this. I mean, obviously it's why I like to do the podcast and have us all share. I think that's huge too, but it just, I think if I were in that type of, because I'm trying to think of if I've had, since being in this, anything where it has felt so split. I mean, obviously I'm in environments a lot of times that are, that feel very different than when I'm, in my own little space at my home, in my own little, because like I'm surrounded by books on angels and magic and and I got into the world and it's like a totally different situation going on. And I think one of the things that has helped me with, and I have to say this too, reminds me of, again, the beginning of talking about feeling like at home on earth or feeling like, an alien from some other planet. What helps me in that is I see a lot. I try to see the spiritual nature, I guess, of all of these experiences. Do you know what I mean? So like, if I go out on the street and there are two people that are just going at it with each other, or, they're really, and they're upset and they are like, they could be drunk and who knows what's going on, all of these things. And I try to look at it not as like, oh, I'm separate in this spiritual bubble, because God knows I have my own stuff going on. But but I try to see it from the lens of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, look at how our egos operate, and oh wow, like look at how we get triggered and we don't hear each other, and oh, look at it. It's like everything seems like a form of study, which I think in a lot of ways can like bridge the gap for us for not feeling so separate from, but literally looking at everything as part of the classroom. It's like just different things on different projectors.
Just removing our judgments, right? Like that's what it comes down to too. And just being students of life and like using all of it. Yeah.
And I will say too, I mean, because I know a lot of people are struggling with the duality that you're talking about. There's so much in, and I wonder if this was or is true for you too. There was so much in my corporate life, now again, hindsight, that helped me a lot in this path than what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, even with like being more like having discipline in certain ways, and you know, setting up your own business, all of these different things. So just a reminder to people, like, don't feel like you have to make some drastic choice, because there is ability to create that merger and that balance.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we're all on the right journey for sure.
Yes.
And like we all are. And I'm definitely so grateful for that time, because I did learn so much. I wouldn't be the person that I am like today if I didn't have that, for sure. Like I wouldn't change a thing about it. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah.
So what about your friends and everyone around you? Are they all into this, or do you have like a separate spiritual community? You know what I mean? Or is it like very much part of your life?
Oh man, it's a mixed bag. It's definitely a mixed bag. I'm definitely the person that my friends go to when they want to know like what Mercury's doing, or they want to know what the next full moon is doing or something like that. But they're so open to it, and they always want to hear about it, which is super cool. So
that's really cool. So I know you offer Reiki and tarot both, right?
Yeah.
Like session wise. So for your tarot sessions, is it kind of just open? You're like, if you want a reading, you can come to me, or is it more you like people to come with a particular focus, or do you just work with everyone?
Yeah, I like the idea of working with a specific focus, just because I think then I like to create spreads. So I like to create a really focused spread for a specific issue. I definitely like working with ideas around like career and business, or like artistic projects that people are working on. That's sort of like my specialty, I guess. Like other creators, I love the questions that they would come to me with, but certainly tarot can lend itself to like any issue at all, for sure.
That's a really, really cool one. Do you blend the two, or are they separate sessions?
Tarot and Reiki?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you asked that, because I've been thinking about that so much lately, how I can merge the two. And I recently went to go get a tarot reading from a reader here in Toronto who I love and have been meaning to meet for so long. So I asked her, like, am I supposed to mix these two offerings? And like, how can I? And I got the Hanged Man. So for any of you tarot readers out there, I just need to chill on that for now, and it needs to kind of like work itself out, I guess. But something that I have been actually really interested in doing is a 7 chakra tarot spread. So that's sort of one way that I'm kind of mixing them right now.
Yeah. It's coming to mind just to ask you right now. I guess maybe, I don't know, play with it. But even when you're doing your Reiki sessions, like, do you ever have moments where maybe certain cards pop in? Because this is so not part of the podcast, although I guess it is now. It's kind of getting the sense that, like if you, almost like you're able to communicate with the cards without having them physically present with you. Do you know what I mean? Like almost, it's like I don't know. I guess you play with it and let me know, keep me posted. But it almost seems like you're able to work with them without touching them. And like if you just almost like had an intention of working on someone with just like, I'm open to whatever cards coming through. Like literally, it seems like the cards would present themselves to you in a session.
No, that's a good question for me to like, for my subconscious to work on, I think, for sure. But yes, the answer is yes, because I do currently have a gig doing Reiki in a Reiki restorative yoga class at like a Friday night here in Toronto at a studio. And how we get the participants in the class to indicate if they want Reiki during the class is we pass around a tarot deck, and they put the tarot card face up at the top of their mat. So I know to give them Reiki, but they have chosen like a little message from the tarot, and I definitely do take that archetype into account when I put my hands over them, and I totally believe that energy is what they need in that moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, really cool. Huh.
It's super awesome. We'll do like an oracle card or like a tarot deck, but it's great. Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing too. I mean, even thinking about the different things that you do, whether it's the writing and the tarot and the, my mind just went Reiki. Yeah, that's what my mind went blank on. But all the beautiful things that you do, like, do you see where they all kind of meet and intersect? Like, do you ever look at that? And
I think it just comes back to like empowering the individual. Like, I started off doing Reiki on myself. We can all do Reiki on ourselves. Like, it's such an accessible tool. Tarot is such a way to like achieve clarity in your own situation, and writing for sure. Like with journaling, you can, oh my gosh, like journal for 10 minutes and you will not know why you were stuck before you started. You know what I mean? Like, these are all like super, super empowering tools that they can just help you feel less stuck and get more clear on your situation.
Okay, so I have to ask you this before we start wrapping up. With these, and I tarot and Reiki specifically, with these, what has been like the greatest gift of them in your life so far? Like, what are you most thankful for in using these tools?
Oh, the people that they have led me to, for sure. Yeah. Some of the most amazing people who are just like angels on earth, for sure. So I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
That is really beautiful. Yeah. And this workshop that you have coming up on Saturday, is it open for anybody? It doesn't matter. Yep. Like, beginner level, advanced.
Yep. Beginner to advanced, anyone who is interested in tarot at all. Yeah.
Okay. And then also, because I know I said your website, and again, I will put the links for everything for people to be able to contact you and ask you questions, book sessions, whatever they want to do. But what are the ways that we can learn more about you and your work besides just the website?
You can email me and ask me anything. I'm always posting on Instagram. I'm always posting on Twitter. I'm very candid. So yeah, just reach out. Just email kaitfowlie@gmail.com if you want to talk. Yeah.
I have to say, I mean, if you are on Instagram, I recommend following her. I love your posts. I really, really do. Like, they're so, like, I don't know. Anyway, they're amazing posts. So I'm so glad that you did come today and share about your story. And I thank you for sharing even out in the world the way that you do, because you really have inspired me too. So always thankful for that. Do you have any tips for anyone before we go? Any last words you want to share?
Just remember that you're on the right path. We're all on the right path. So
that is a good one.
Follow your curiosity and follow your inspiration. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kait. I know that you and I will stay connected. And again, if you want to learn more about Kait and her work, go to kaitfowlie.com, kaitfowlie.com. Be sure to check out her tarot workshop this Saturday and read her writing. Her work is absolutely amazing and will inspire you. So as always, I thank everyone for tuning in, and remember to always journey in love.